The boardroom was silent except for the steady ticking of the antique clock mounted high on the walnut-paneled wall. Its sound cut through the stillness like a reminder that time never paused, and not even for the most powerful of men. Adrian Blake, the CEO of Blake Enterprises, leaned back in his chair, eyes half-lidded as the last of the executives filed out. The air still carried the faint musk of cologne and ambition, both lingering long after their owners had departed. He had just sealed another billion-dollar deal, the kind of triumph that newspapers would celebrate in bold headlines the next morning. Yet instead of victory swelling in his chest, an emptiness spread there, vast and unrelenting. He rubbed his temples, feeling this fatigue settle into his bones. Success, wealth, influence, he had all of it. Yet none of it mattered once the applause died and the glass doors shut. The silence always followed him, chasing him into penthouses and limousines, into private jets and five-star hotel rooms. He was the man who had everything and no one. Adrian rose, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the polished marble floor. He slipped on his coat, tailored to perfection, its fabric sharp against the chill that seemed to seep from within rather than from the storm outside. The storm was raging, a relentless downpour that hammered against the city's glass towers and left the streets slick and reflective, like 1,000 shattered mirrors. His driver was waiting, black umbrella in hand, but Adrian waved him off. "I'll walk," he muttered. The driver hesitated, unused to such requests, but bowed his head and stepped back into the warmth of the car. The rain soaked Adrian within seconds. It plastered his dark hair to his forehead, trickled down the angular planes of his face, and bled into the fine wool of his suit. He welcomed it. The storm was honest, at least. It didn't care about deals, fortunes, or reputations. It fell on everyone the same. As he made his way down the long steps leading to the street, his gaze snagged on something small, something out of place against the sleek glass facade of Blake Enterprises. A figure curled near the revolving doors, almost invisible against the shadow of the building. At first, he thought it was a bundle of discarded clothes, perhaps some vagrant seeking shelter from the storm. But then it shifted, lifted a head, and he saw a white, fragile, glistening with unshed tears, a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, her tiny frame swallowed in a threadbare sweater 2 sizes too big. The sleeves dragged over her trembling hands as she clutched a worn teddy bear, its fur matted from rain, her shoes up if they could be called that. They were nothing more than torn sneakers, soaked through until her small toes peeked out. Her hair, tangled and damp, clung to her pale face, but her eyes a broken bar. They were the kind that caught and held you, luminous even in the storm, carrying a sorrow far too heavy for someone so small. Adrian froze. His life had been built on negotiations, mergers, ruthless decisions that cut empires in half, but nothing prepared him for the sight of this fragile soul shivering on the steps of his empire. The girl stared up at him, lips trembling, and for a moment, they simply looked at each other. The rain fell harder, but she didn't move, didn't flinch. Finally, in a voice that quavered yet carried a strange kind of bravery, she whispered, "Yeah, broken bar, I don't have a papa." The words pierced him with brutal precision. He blinked, unsure if he'd heard correctly. Her tiny hand tightened around the teddy bear as if it were her lifeline. She swallowed hard, then forced the rest out, her voice breaking on the edges. "Can you, a broken bar, can you be my daddy forever?" Adrian swirled, stilled. The city noises blurred, the honking taxis, the distant sirens, the endless hum of neon. He felt his chest tighten, not from anger, not from stress, but from something unfamiliar, something raw. He, who had built walls higher than skyscrapers, who had locked every tender part of himself behind steel, suddenly found them cracking. His throat worked, but no words came out. He lowered himself slowly, his expensive suit already ruined by the rain. Yet none of it mattered. Up close, he could see how thin she was, how her knees knocked together from cold, how her lips were tinged blue. She smelled faintly of rain and dust, the kind of scent that came from long nights without shelter. "Where's your mother?" he asked softly, his voice gentler than he'd used in years. The little girl's eyes darted toward the street, where cars rushed by, splashing water onto the sidewalks. She hesitated, then whispered, Broken bar went to heaven last week. Her small hand clutched the teddy tighter, as though she might fall apart without it. They said I had to go to the shelter, to Broken Bar, but they don't have space. She looked down at her wet shoes, then back up at him, hope flickering like a fragile candle. I remembered this big building with your name. I thought maybe Broken Bar, maybe you'd help. Adrian's breath caught. He had been called many things in his life: tyrant, shark, genius, monster, but never daddy, never anyone's safe place. For years, he had buried memories of his own childhood, of nights when he too had felt abandoned, unwanted. His father, a stern man who had valued power over affection, had died before Adrian turned 10. His mother had withered away soon after, leaving him to be raised by nannies in private schools where affection was rationed like rare wine. He had sworn never to feel that weakness again, never to be at the mercy of anyone's absence. And yet, here was this child, looking at him not as the CEO of Blake Enterprises, not as the man who ruled boardrooms, but as something he never thought he could be. A protector. He cleared his throat, forcing steadiness into his voice. "What's your name?" The girl blinked, startled by the question. "Leela," she whispered. "Leela Grace." Adrian repeated it silently, the name soft on his tongue. "Leela." He almost smiled, though it felt foreign on his lips. "How old are you?" "7, but I'll be 8 soon." She straightened her shoulders as if the detail mattered, as if being a year older made her more deserving of a place in his world. Adrian studied her, his heart an unfamiliar storm of emotions. Her courage, her desperation, the sheer audacity of her request. It unraveled him. He thought of the sterile penthouse waiting for him, of the long nights spent staring at city lights with no one to share them with, of the silence that echoed louder than applause. For the first time, he wondered if this child of this drenched, trembling little girl was sent to shatter the loneliness he had mistaken for strength. "Forever is a long time," he murmured, almost to himself. But Leela heard him. Her eyes didn't waver. She clutched her teddy bear tighter and whispered with a fragile kind of certainty, "But you're big enough for forever." The words disarmed him completely. Adrian swallowed hard, fighting the unfamiliar sting at the back of his eyes. The rain continued to fall, but for once, he didn't feel cold.